In the last episode, DS9 received an encrypted Cardigan message from the Gamma Quadrant that turned out to be a call for help from none other than Brentane, a former head of the Obsidian Order who went off to nuke the Founders a couple of seasons back and was last seen getting kaboomed. A mission to chase things up with Plain Simple Garak and Worf went pear-shaped, and they were captured, then put into exactly the same space prison as Tane, which is a handy coincidence. Oh, and Martok, husband of Sorella, is alive and imprisoned there too. Tane's in poor health, which becomes very poor health when he does a dead. That ruins Plain Simple Garak's chance to get any of the birthday and Christmas presents he's owed, as it turns out Tane was actually his dad as well as his mentor. Maybe his annoyance is why he decides to try and escape. While all this has gone on, Seagull Ducat has been on the station trying to get his daughter Zial to leave, the rather large incoming Dominion fleet being a good reason for doing so. They fall out when she refuses and he leaves alone, but not quick enough to dodge the fleet that arrives after our attempt to close the wormhole fails. Well, I say fails, but it was actually sabotaged, probably by Doppelbashir, as the one we have on the station is actually a founder, and ours is in that space prison with Worf, Plain Simple Garak, Martok, husband of Sorella, and an increasingly rigid Brentane. Let's rejoin the station and see how they deal with this Dominion fleet. The answer is they don't, probably just as well, as we've only got the Defiant, a couple of mega shuttles, and Seagull Ducat's nicked Klingon ship, though we lose the latter anyway. As the Dominion fleet turns towards Cardassia, Seagull Ducat joins them with a call to us, explaining that the Cardigans have decided to join the Dominion and the rest of us can all get stuffed. To Worf and Company we go, where we're planning a jailbreak. Tane's original message was hardwired into the gubbins he jury-rigged for sending it, but we can change it to contact our mega shuttle and teleport away. It's a plan which assumes the mega shuttle is both here and unsecured, but let's ignore that for now and let Plain Simple Garak get to work. Or not, as everybody's called outside. Cardassia formally joining the Dominion means all the Cardigans here are being released and sent home. All except Plain Simple Garak, that is, as Seagull Ducat is the guy now in charge and asked for him to remain. Someone like Seagull Ducat doesn't decline the chance to make a speech, and he's broadcasting it far and wide. Reassurance to the rest of Cardassia is mixed with the promise of violence for their enemies, specifically the Klingons and Maquis at this point. He can do it, too, with his new friends. Even if those 50 Dominion ships aren't enough, he can get more, as our sabotaged attempt to close the wormhole has done the exact opposite and strengthened it, so now we don't even have that option anymore. Doppelbashir suggests more blood screenings to find the saboteur, and Sisko adds a bit of low-level weapons fire, too, as we know that works on Odo. To the Alcatraz droid once more, and Plain Simple Garak is thoroughly detesting the conditions in which he's working. Approaching Jem'Hadar, forcing him to be sealed in, doesn't help either, as they've come to collect Worf. They want to use him for practice fights like they did with Martok, husband of Sorella. Once they've gone, Bashir gets Plain Simple Garak out of his confinement and discovers it's having a very unpleasant effect on him. He orders regular breaks to relieve things, but if we want to get out of here, we don't have much of a choice but for him to continue. DS9 has had some arrivals, but not the expected Starfleet ships. Gowron, boss lad of the Klingons, has decided being in Cardigan space with all those Dominion ships might not be the smartest choice and pulled back to DS9. Sisko takes the opportunity to suggest we swap our currently shaky ceasefire for the previous peace treaty so we can focus on bigger things, and Gowron agrees. As DS9 achieves peace, Worf's winning his 5th fight by snapping a lad's neck. It's not gone entirely his way, and the injuries are starting to add up, though he insists on continuing. Plain Simple Garak is continuing too, despite the conditions. His light going out proves the final straw, and some banging as he panics causes Bashir to pull him out. Claustrophobia is the official diagnosis, and a serious case of it to boot. Plain Simple Garak having endured it for this long is impressive, but him being out of commission means the whole escape plan is now buggered. There are setbacks on Deep Space Nine as well, as Odo's discovered someone, presumably our saboteur, used an industrial replicator to make an unknown item, then wipe the memory. There's not much we can do about it, save for increasing security, but that'll have to wait as Seagull Ducat is calling. It's 50% gloat, 50% attempt to convince the Federation to join the Dominion. When both of those are met with rejection, it becomes 100% threat. DS9 was a former Cardigan station after all, and he said Cardassia would retake all it has lost. There are no losses on Alcatraz though, at least not for Worf. He's 7-0 against the Jem'Hadar, all of which means squat if we don't have an escape plan. Just as well that plain simple Garak feels up to forcing himself back into confinement then. He'll need to pull his finger out too, as things are escalating. Worf's up for another fight, only this time the lead Jem'Hadar in our space prison has decided it's his turn in the ring. Even worse, the display isn't enough to keep all the other Jem'Hadar entertained, and a trio of them enter the bunkhouse looking for plain simple Garak. They've looked everywhere else, so decided to start turning this room over instead, which is how they come to find the tool Bashir's been using to open the crawl space plain simple Garak is currently in. Deep Space Nine is getting ready for shit to kick off. We're even involving the 3 mega shuttles still here, which I'm pretty sure is one more than we normally have, given there's a 4th currently in the Gamma Quadrant. Maybe that's why Bashir thought he could nick one, though he's keeping it quiet by responding to calls with a voice that presumably belongs to one of the randoms lying on the floor. There are more unexpected ships too, when a metric fuckton of Romulans appear as well. Maybe they know they're next if we fall, or maybe they just hold a grudge for the kicking they took a few seasons back. Either way, we have more guns now, which is handy as we've detected incoming Cardigan and Dominion ships. And to Alcatraz we go again, where the Jem'Hadar are getting very insistent about knowing what that tool they've found is for. Bashir being glib results in a random getting murderized to make a point, which wasn't really necessary as another Jem'Hadar has figured it out. He opens the crawl space but can't see anything as plain simple Garak has turned off the light. One of the Jem'Hadar being busy makes the Breen prisoner think now's a good time to start a Barney. The resulting squabble ends with 1 dead Breen and 3 dead Jem'Hadar, so it's a respectable enough ratio. It does, however, mean that we now have a very tight time limit, as these lads are going to be missed, so Bashir tells plain simple Garak to get a bloody move on. We should probably hurry anyway, as Worf's getting his arse handed to him. He's putting up enough of a fight to impress the boss Jem'Hadar, though, who tries to convince him to stop, along with Martok, husband of Sorella. Worf refuses to yield, so the Vorta from earlier thinks boss Jem'Hadar should just off him. All of which is enough to make boss Jem'Hadar decide to yield instead. Killing Worf isn't the same as beating Worf, he says, a decision the Vorta takes issue with and tells another lad to murderize them both. Handily, the order to fire is given just as plain simple Garak finishes the job, so Worf is teleported away with everyone else as boss Jem'Hadar does a dead. Equally handily, the mega shuttle is both freely floating and unlocked, so we skedaddle as fast as we can. Back on the station, we're waiting for the incoming Cardigans and Dominion. In fact, we're still waiting when the sensors say they've arrived. According to our systems, they should be all over the place, but we can't see a damn thing. On top of that, we're now receiving a transmission from the Gamma Quadrant, which is impressive when we were told all of our probes had been kaboomed, but maybe the Dominion spared the one we launched in Season 3 because it was part Cardigan. Either way, Sisko's confused to learn Bashir's calling from the other side of the wormhole, but after checking with the computer and learning Bashir was last seen at a docking bay and is no longer on the station, figures out that he's our saboteur and sends the Defiant after the megashuttle that launched from there. The megashuttle's on its way to Bajor's star and is proving hard to kaboom. It's also carrying enough science bollocks to make the star have a very bad day indeed, and apparently take the collective fleets here with it, which seems unlikely when they can travel faster than light, but let's ignore that for now. Either way, it's going to end very poorly for DS9 and Bajor. Kira's disinclined to let that happen and does some warp-speed tractoring, throwing the shuttle off target and kabooming it. We'll assume Bashir got out, as I doubt staying on the mega shuttle when it ate shit inside a star was part of the plan, but I think we can safely say those Starfleet randoms are definitely dead now. All's well that ends well. The incoming fleet signals were fake, our mega shuttle from the Gamma Quadrant is back, and everybody's fine. We've also got the Klingons on our side now, to the point that Gowron wants to leave a force here for our protection, with Sisko asking that Martok, husband of Sorella, be placed in charge of it. Even a call from Seagull Dukat to remind us he's a complete bastard who was willing to murderize his own daughter in a supernova can't dampen things, so we'll leave Sisko to savour the win and worry about the battles of tomorrow until the next adventure. The Dominion are finally here, and in more ways than one. A significant military presence would be worrying enough, but Cardassia joining them makes the problem far more complicated than simply getting rid of the physical incursion. The founders now have a legitimate claim to be here, albeit one that requires travelling via the domain of a third party. And that makes everything significantly more of a ball ache for us. It's no longer technically an invasion fleet for a start, instead being more akin to a Starfleet presence in Bajoran space if they joined the Federation. Options for how to deal with that while upholding Federation principles are extremely limited. In fact, an attempt to interfere without very clear evidence of a threat to the Federation might even technically constitute a Prime Directive violation, as who Cardassia chooses to ally itself with is an internal political matter. I think you'd struggle to find admirals who agree with that conclusion based on Dominion rule being something that Siegel Dukat has essentially imposed on a civilian government, and that's before you take previous overtly hostile actions from the Dominion into account, but it's yet another wrinkle to consider. While we're on the topic, Siegel Dukat is now essentially the Emperor of Cardassia, but how did that come to pass? We can assume that many, if not most, of the remaining officers in the Central Command were convinced to join by the arrival of 50 Jem'Hadar ships, and that's if Siegel Dukat hadn't already arranged it with them beforehand. The Central Command's dislike of the civilian Detapa Council predates their handling of the Klingon invasion, and it only got worse after it. It was their inaction which made Siegel Dukat go rogue after all, and he felt there were plenty of others who'd follow. Being openly hostile towards the civilian council is something that none of them were willing to do before, though. We've previously suggested that a lack of overt opposition implied significant public support for the Detapa Council, so we can reasonably conclude the actions of Siegel Dukat here might mean that public support is no longer present. When you've been told a new direction for your society will bring liberty and freedom, but just a year later half your colonies are on fire, it's easy to see how people would link the two. And that possibility has further implications, as the Klingon invasion was itself a founder plot. The assumption had been that having Klingons and Cardigans knock the shit out of each other had simply been meant to deplete the fighting forces of both, but it also left a proud race in a position of weakness. I wonder if holding talks with the Dominion was really Siegel Dukat's idea, or one that was mentioned in passing by a random member of his crew, one who perhaps inexplicably disappeared shortly afterwards. As we're already in headcanon mode, let's talk about the strife between Deos the Vorta and Ikatika the Jem'Hadar. Each holds the other in contempt, the Vorta mocking warrior instinct, the Jem'Hadar with little patience for diplomacy or deception. Was hating each other a deliberate manipulation from the founders, and might that tie into a previous idea we've had? We suggested a while back that Ketracel White was made only by the founders and distributed by the Vorta as a system to keep both Vorta and Jem'Hadar in check. Jem'Hadar need the Vorta for White, but would never be part of a Vorta-led rebellion because actions against the founders essentially amount to a death sentence. Thus the Vorta have significant power to wield, but that power can never be used against their masters. Building on that idea is this mutual disdain between Vorta and Jem'Hadar an intentional adaptation to prevent any sort of trust forming. A lack of respect for someone's entire outlook on life makes a significant hurdle to overcome, so having two aspects of your power be diametrically opposed to each other feels convenient enough to be more than coincidence. Perhaps that instinctive distaste might also be to prevent any one group adopting the skills of the other and holding too much power as a result. Those of you who've been here for a while will know I like little touches in an episode, so I've got a couple to nod at approvingly in this one. The first is in Space Prison. As Bashir's checking over plain simple Garak when he's first brought out of the crawlspace, he takes a pulse from his head rather than his wrist or neck. It's an incidental detail, and possibly done to prevent rubbing off makeup as he holds onto the wig if you look closely, but finding a pulse in a non-human place is a good bit of world-building all the same. There's a second little touch in Siegel Dukat's speech. He specifically mentions his son's birthday, and claims his actions are for all their sons. It's the sort of thing a petty little shitbag would say after falling out with his daughter, a deliberately specific comment meant to be missed by all except its target, and one perfectly tuned to Siegel Dukat's ego. In the interest of balance, we should probably point out a clangor while we're at it, so let's mention Doppelbashir's magical disappearing, reappearing crew. In the Mega Shuttle Doppelbashir Nix, there are 3 Starfleet randoms. 2 are on the floor, a third in a seat slumped over a console, and all visible when he takes off. Later on, as Doppelbashir is being pooped at by the Defiant, we get a side view of him which includes the seat where our third random should be slumped over. Perhaps they got hungry and went for a snack, as in the next shot of the Mega Shuttle, they're back again in the same position. We shouldn't begrudge them a last meal, I guess, as they get kaboomed shortly after. I suppose the last thing we should mention then is that with this episode, Deep Space Nine has resumed its regularly scheduled programming. The decision to add Worf and subsequent Klingon shenanigans in Season 4 threw the main plot off by more than a year, but we're now essentially back to how things were planned. The Klingons are formally an ally once more, and our focus has been moved to the Dominion and Cardassia again, so we can get back to all those delicious, ethically dubious things we were doing before, and where Deep Space Nine is most at home. End of episode.
You're sure about this, are you?
Absolutely. When Murdoch did a brainial interface on the Enterprise D, it worked perfectly.
And this is what he used, is it? An IKEA chair with laser pointers over it?
Well, not exactly, but the concept is the same. The files for how he actually built the thing are classified and held by Section 31, but I was able to reverse engineer it using my solid grasp of 24th century scientific principles.
One question, and I'd like an honest answer, please.
Shoot.
Is this thing gonna fry my brain?
Well, they're not cartoon lasers, so you should be fine.
You know, the worst part of that answer is it almost makes sense. Right, let's get on with it.
Oh, and if you get the urge to rip a hole in spacetime and transport the station halfway across the galaxy, try and resist it.
That's likely then, is it?
Based on a sample size of 1, it's a distinct possibility. Woof.